guys. Welcome to Sang Lucci's first webinar in a while. I'm here, this is Charlie Bathgate, and I'm talking to Anand Sangvi, also known as Lucci. Say what up, Lucci.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Good to be back. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a bit, guys. It's been about 2 months since I think we've done something like this, and part of that is because Anand took a break from trading. He took what was it, about 6 weeks, 8 weeks off, Anand?
Yeah, almost 2 months.
Yeah, and you know, part of that is just like soaking up the last remaining nice months of weather in Boston, right? Before.
You know what? This summer has been very tempered, so yeah, absolutely. You know, just a little bit here and there. You know,
Right.
spending time with the fam, things like that. Enjoying the summer, getting away from the crazy New York lifestyle I was living for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, you know, we were all living and working together in, you know, the infamous Lucci loft in New York, and towards the end of May, Anand moved to Boston, which was part of the plan to be with his daughter and the rest of his family. So he's been getting settled back in, and also taking a little bit of a step back and just sort of reevaluating some stuff. And I think that's what we're here to talk about right now. You know, for the next half hour, guys, we're going to be talking about the process that Anand has kind of gone through of reevaluating some aspects of his trading and what the benefits are of going through a process like that, what they are. So, you know, we're going to go through, I think, really looking at the pieces of Anand's strategy that are the most important to the biggest differentiators, right, in terms of what he does that makes him so different, and then mentally how his break has affected his perception of those pieces of his trading. So it may sound complicated, but it really isn't. If you guys have questions, you know, throughout the webinar, feel free to just type them into the chat. If we're able to answer them right away, we'll do that. If not, we'll save them to the Q&A session at the end. So, without further ado, let's hop into this. So, I got all my questions over here, Luch. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's start with the tape, right? For the people who don't know you, don't know you know, your style of trading very well, explain very briefly to them what the tape is, and then how the tape gives you an advantage mentally, right? And if that advantage has changed over, you know, what you've changed over the last 2 months.
Right. So, I mean, tape, guys, is what we're referring to when we're saying tape is just your level 2 and time and sales. That's literally what we're talking about. So, all we're talking about here, for example, let me drag this over here too. You know, this is an example of a level 2 and a time and sales as well. Oftentimes in your platforms, they'll have them both connected. So this is literally it. You're just watching other people interact, you know, as you're sitting there watching that stock. So you're watching all the other participants in the marketplace act or not act on that particular stock. You're watching how they're moving orders around. You're watching how they're sending their orders. You're watching how their orders are executed. You're basically watching everything. Now, granted, there's a lot that you can't see on the time and sales. There's dark pools and things like that, but on the time and sales, you can see the actual transactions, the dark pool transactions that come off, but you can't see that liquidity on the level 2. So, for example, if there's liquidity in the middle of your bid and offer, you know, on a dark pool somewhere, you're not going to be able to see that. But if somebody is actually transacting through that dark pool, you know, you can check it out over here on the time and sales. So this is basically the marketplace. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at the physical marketplace for that stock or option that you're trading. So that's what it is right there, Charlie.
Right. And in the simplest of terms, it's just like basic economics, right? You know, supply and demand fluctuations determine price. You're looking for those fluctuations to make a prediction on the price, right?
Absolutely, that's it. So at its most fundamental, you know, sort of characteristic, it's all just shifts in supply and demand. It's shift in, you know, is that for the time frame that you're looking at, you know, is demand greater than supply? Therefore, your stock will go higher for that particular time frame. That's all it is.
Right, right. Okay. So then let's talk about, you know, you've been reading the tape for, you know, 6, 7, 8, what is it, 8 years now? How long have you been reading the tape for?
Yeah, 7 years, man, 7 years.
Right, right. Okay, so you've been reading the tape for 7 years. You know, you take some time off. The tape especially can be a difficult thing, I feel like, to pick back up, right? Because different tapes move different ways, right? I mean, Apple might be moving
True.
have sort of a different feel to it one week. The next week, someone else is trading it, something else is going on.
True,
So,
absolutely, absolutely. So you
yeah,
got to realize, like, you can only see. Remember, like, you're looking through your eyes, right? And you're looking through your brain, right? So just think of looking at a window, right, with a crusty covered screen over it, right? So,
we're
or
talking
like,
about your brain, right? This is from your eyes, for your brain. Gotcha.
and by the way, I'm jacking this from Joe Pesci in that movie where he was a lawyer or whatever.
Oh, my cousin Vinny.
My cousin Vinny. I'm
Right.
jacking this from my cousin Vinny right now.
That's a
So,
great place to jack it from.
so, so for example, like, you're only good, like, your tape reading skills are only going to be good as comparatively to the knowledge that you have on how to read that information. You know what I mean? So any newbie that's starting to look at the tape would look at it and be like, well, what am I looking at? This is just a bunch of numbers flying down the screen, right? And as you progress in your tape reading skills, and as you understand who's doing what's actually happening, your analysis of the tape grows and grows and grows. Now, you get to a level though where you're great at tape reading. You almost feel the tape. So it's not even you sitting there looking at these things. It's just you feel it now. It becomes like a part of you. It's sort of instinctual. And then
Right.
the only other differentiating factor is your mindset. Like, are you actually paying attention to it and acting accordingly, or
Right.
do you have other things that are influencing your decisions
Right.
beyond the tape? So you might be still reading the same tape and still taking away what you need to, but are you paying attention to it? So
Right.
when you get to my level, 7 years, 8 years, or even a couple of years, and you're really good at reading tape, now the only question is that are you actually listening to it? Are you reacting to it?
Right, right. Okay, so essentially what you're saying is, that you have your underlying skill sets, right? You have your ability to read the tape, and yeah, you
Right.
have to develop that over time. But then, you're taking a step back. During the last 2 months, you weren't like revisiting how to read the tape. You were sort of
No,
making the
no.
mental adjustments so
No,
that you
so
could.
that's yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Now, my bad, I didn't hit on it. So, when you're coming back from a break, let's say you come back from a break and you're taking a look at the tape, you're still seeing what you need to. So it's not what you're reading; it's more your actions, And again, like
Right.
that's more of a personal thing. So you might be a little
Right.
gun shy, or
Right.
you might be a little hesitant to put on some risk, and
Right.
you haven't looked at a P&L screen for a while, and all of a sudden your P&L starts fluctuating, all those old feelings start coming right back, and you're like, oh, that's what that feels like. Shit.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember. I remember. I
I
remember what
remember.
this feels like.
Right,
So that's
right. Okay.
okay.
So, like, I mean, put yourself into the shoes of, Lucci that took a different path in trading, and you just took this 2 month break, but you're only using technical analysis, right?
Sure.
What do you feel like is different mentally for the Lucci that is the tape reader versus the one who's only using technical analysis, right? I mean, do you feel like the tape gives you a mental advantage, a higher level of confidence? Like, how does that play into the mental
I
side?
would say it definitely gives you a more focused advantage, and that's really the takeaway here. It's a more focused approach because when you're trading on technical analysis, you might have your setups and all that kind of stuff, and you might have different indicators that you use to guide you as far as where things could go and everything. But there's a lot of room for flip-flopping. And this
Right.
is where a lot of mistakes start happening as far as decision making and things like that. And don't get me wrong, tape readers will do it too. But again, their approach is just a lot more focused. It's a lot more focused on one or two stocks, or a couple of baskets of stocks
Right.
versus hundreds of different stocks that you could get yourself into. So again, like, technical analysis to me, number one, like, it doesn't give you the confidence that you need anymore as far as your actual trading setups go.
Hmm.
And then number two, like, there's a lot of flip-flopping that you'll do simply because the indicators that everybody is used to using and all that kind of stuff, all these chart patterns, and they work a lot differently now, and they're not working the same way that they did 10 years ago and things like that. So I
Right.
feel like people have had to, again, like with any with any marketplace, just like the markets, or whatever it is, like, people get smarter. The
Right.
access to information, technology gets better, people get smarter, and just with retail getting smarter, the smart money behind it is getting they're getting so much smarter, and
That's
the
what I
way
was
that
going to
they're
ask about.
gaming the way that they're gaming things is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. I mean, if you are coming back, I would imagine, after a little bit of a break that, you might start smaller, your confidence might be a little more shaky than it typically would. If you have the tape, I feel like the sort of the detail-oriented nature of the tape, how specific it is, right, and the fact that it is harder to manipulate tape than it is technical amount, like, support resistance levels and whatnot.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we got a comment here too. Jason is saying, don't technical indicators lag and tape is real time? That's a factor as well.
Right.
And what you see on the tape, provided you see it properly, right, absolutely, it's that ultimate indicator. Again, providing you can read it properly. As far as buyers and sellers, is there anything behind these buyers? Are we going to keep going? Are we going to reverse here? Things like that, which technical analysis, there's nothing there for that. Technical
Right.
analysis will give you an entry. It'll give you confirmation whether you should stay in the trade, but that confirmation is very vague. And exits get a little rough, especially with the choppy environment and everything. So you can't really adapt to what the market is throwing at you second to second, day by day. Now, for some longer-term strategies, that's fine. That's absolutely fine if you're holding things for a month or 2 months and things like that, and you don't want to deal with all this intraday nonsense.
Right.
But there are a lot of situations where the smart money has everybody pushed to one side, and there needs to be a nasty washout, which is exactly what happened today and what could possibly happen tomorrow. So you have these situations that technical analysis will never give you that indication on. The only thing that will is your experience. Is a possibility if you've been trading for a while and you've seen these things happen all the time,
Right.
or the tape, which you can physically see changes in the environment that you're trading, changes that you might need to pay attention to, and changes that you might have to adapt your strategy or your position for.
Right, right. So when we were talking about how we were going to present a lot of this information yesterday, we were talking about an example of you're coming back into trading, and let's say you're a little bit jacked up. You got an itchy trigger finger, right, and you're kind of ready to jump into things. You
Right.
see a move that looks like it is obviously something you want to jump into. The
Right.
tape. You said to me, okay, but in that situation, here's the benefit of having the tape. I can go to that and I can see that the tape is not backing up what's happening in the move, and it's a fake out. I can step away from that. I can avoid that kind of pitfall. I mean, do you feel like that's held up, that example that you gave, or I mean, have you seen some of this happen?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've seen it happen today. I gave that example where, again, my strategy has sort of adapted for that. I mean, that was like a pitfall of mine for a considerable period of time. And again, that goes back to, are you actually reacting to what the tape is giving you? So absolutely, when the typical, let's say, form of a fake out, when you're trying to play these directional positions and you're going for these monster breakouts and monster breakdowns, most of the time, guys, there's nothing behind that. There's nothing behind that, and there's not enough demand or supply to prove that particular move.
Right.
So oftentimes people get into options trades very early. They might get heavy too early. This is something that happens to all of us. But the tape is really there to give you that confidence, to give you that confirmation, like, okay, there's something behind this, and if there's not, start unloading your position, or at least start hedging. Doing a lot of things that can help you out. Or just take the reverse position. So there's plenty of things that you can do and react to it, provided you're paying attention to it. So absolutely, it does give those signals much better than any other form of analysis, really.
Right, right. And guys, yeah, we're looking at your comments, and if you have questions, feel free to put them in the question box. We'll get to them either in sort of the flow of things or at the end of the Q&A session. T-Rex is saying, tape reading for me this spring summer has really burned me out, like slow hypnotizing, then a beat down on my P&L. Today's been the best day of my year. Account plus 4%. Congrats, man.
Hmm.
Seemed like things were more fluid. I hope the market moves more like today. And people were sort of questioning, hey, why take some time off, blah blah blah. And it's like, if you're going to take, the July and August, are, it's like the doldrums. There's the volume
Yeah.
drops out. I mean, I don't think you're the only one, T-Rex, that got burned out sort of looking at the tape.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not for nothing though. I mean, even during the summertime, like there was some monstrous money on the table. There was, but again, with that low volume, with that low volatility, especially if you trade options, dealing with those two things when you trade options, it gets pretty difficult. You got to be a lot more patient. Things are not as clear. There's not that much follow through. Your tape is going to be all over the place. So, summer trading is definitely burns a lot of people out. And more so than anything, you end up buying options that just go nowhere.
Right.
That's most people's summer. Most people's summer is you buy options, they go nowhere. That's most of it. And if
Well,
you have to sit there and watch that, like who wants to watch that? Who really wants to watch that?
right, especially when it's money just draining out of their bank account. That's
Right.
probably, not the best way to spend the summer.
Indeed.
I mean, let's use that to transition into talking about options. I mean,
Sure.
you have your own method for pricing options, right? It's a way that you've put together a very simplified, relatively speaking, way of looking at these things. Do you feel like that's helped you in your, when you come back from breaks like this to jump into things
Yeah.
more quickly?
Dude, I'll tell you right now, like I mean, I've been at this for a while, right? And I've looked at options from a lot of different perspectives. And I've also grown as far as my knowledge in the option space goes. From, Brian Weiner, from, a lot of people that have been around that I've talked to about their strategies and all that kind of stuff. I've
Right.
learned a lot. But the reason why the particular methodology that I use, it works so well is because it's part of you. It's part of how you think. It's that simple, and it's that much rooted in common sense that it literally is how you think anyway. How you would think if you were buying or selling a particular option. So the methodology that I have absolutely gives me a mental edge, simply because I can look at an option right away and just be like, and make the conclusions that I need to make as to whether or not I'm going to play it, as to where I want to play it, and I can do that very quickly. And simply
Right.
because that methodology, I just did that myself. You know what I mean? I did it myself for me because I didn't want to. I'm sitting there reading these books, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. This
Right.
is ridiculous. Like I can learn all this. But I can still lose money here, or I can still not understand what it is that I'm actually doing. And that goes back to the story about that kid that was at my prop firm that just knew everything, and he knew all the deltas, he knew all the Greeks, he just knew everything in the world.
All right.
This kid still couldn't make a dime, right? I was always that guy. I was like, okay, all right, these options are cool. I can definitely make some money off of them. How do I fit this whole methodology into my world? And that's
Right.
all it was. It was pure common sense, and it's how everybody thinks. So it's how you naturally think about an option. That's what the methodology is based around. It's not based around anything else. So as soon as you buy something, you know what you're doing.
Right. And when you say how everyone thinks, I mean you're talking about like professionals, I mean guys
I'm
like I
talking
mean
about I'm talking about professionals, or even
right.
like somebody like yourself. Somebody like yourself.
Right.
If you were to start trading and you were to
Right.
start options trading, if you come and learn that particular methodology, the one that I created, like
Right.
you're up and ready to go. You are up and ready to go. You're ready to move.
Oh yeah.
You
Oh
are
yeah.
ready to move. You understand the game, and that's it. But
Yep.
when it's taught this other way, and no slight to that, or no offense to that or anything whatsoever. And
Right.
those metrics are absolutely useful, the gammas, the deltas, and all that kind of stuff. But when it's taught to you like that, you start thinking about options in a certain way, that you can only play them a certain way, and you start losing the attachment between the stock and option, which is what you need to prove why you should be doing X, Y, and Z in that option.
Right. Right. Okay. So let's talk about, you have, like, just like we just talked about, your own method for pricing an option, and
Right.
there's sentiment in there, there's the underlying, there's volatility. Um, what for you, after taking the break, is the hardest thing to come back and sort of do your own mental split-second calculations? Because one of the things that people talk about so much when they come and watch you trade, pros, everyone across the spectrum, is how quickly you are able to just, go through your own processes and execute, right?
Right.
What for you have you felt like has given you the most trouble as you get back into it?
I would definitely say the time decay aspect. I would definitely say the time decay aspect of it, simply because when you're coming back, you're a little gun shy, or whatever the case is. You're trying to figure out what expirations you want to play for. Oftentimes, you kind of hop back and forth between the two. I would say that was always one of my biggest issues. So
Right.
hopping back and forth between, let's say, a front month or a very close expiration versus building into a position and taking my time with it. And spending more time reading that stock, seeing if, okay, is everything lining up okay, and then making the appropriate trade. So I think I think that's probably one of the biggest issues for me. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay. And then, I mean, so how mentally have you kind of adjusted to that, right? I mean, time decay is
Yeah,
the
I think
challenge.
I think a lot of it is maturity, man, to be honest. It's like you go through these, and again, like what I've been through. I think in the last 7 years, as far as trading is concerned,
Right,
it really can be equated to life. You go through so many different periods. You gain knowledge. You start looking at things differently than you did 5 years ago. You start acting differently than you did 5 years ago. You start doing and thinking about a lot of different things that you never would have thought about, 5 years ago when you were making a trade.
right,
So that's kind of what it is. So as far as the options trader's career, it's always an evolution. It's always sort of a growing process. So I would say, to answer that question, is once you start understanding yourself more, and where you do good, where you do bad, then you can start really outlining how your, all the real specifics about your strategy, and
right,
start sticking to these things, because you're thinking about the long term versus thinking about today or thinking about tomorrow and things like that. So,
right,
so really creating a structure around how you trade, so position sizes, drawdowns, all that kind of stuff, which I never would have thought about before, but now I'm starting to think about, and I'm starting to filter into my trading decisions.
right, right, right. Okay. And guys, we see your questions. Keep them coming. We're going to get to them in about 5 minutes here when we get to the Q&A session. Let's talk about some of the changes, because we've said that we're focusing kind of on the mental approach to how you've adjusted things, and we talk about all the time that the mental side of the game is not just it's not just when the markets are open, right, or what you're doing when you're actually clicking, and placing a trade. There's other aspects to it as well,
Yeah,
gym and sleep and diet. I mean, what
right.
if you could kind of identify the top couple things that you've changed in terms of that side of your trading approach? Like, what do you feel like they are? How have they helped? Give these guys a rundown on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm the best example, right? Because when you're talking about environment, right? You're talking about environment. Let's say the most conducive environment, right, for you to trade. Everybody has their specific thing, right? I mean, you
Right.
might trade better when there's complete quiet around, and there's nobody around you. Other people might trade better when they're at a firm, when there's 30 people around them, and they get the motivation from everybody else to go in there and crank it out every single day.
Right.
So there's different motivations, and there's different ideal environments for everybody. You do have to define that for yourself. I was always the one to hop around through different environments, right? I never gave any credence to my particular environment, but you take a city like New York, right, and you take a personality like mine.
Right.
It's sort of a recipe for the greatest things to ever happen and the worst things to ever happen at the same time, right?
Right.
So everything happens, though. You know what I mean? So when you're talking pure volatility as far as a lifestyle, it's all there. The ups and downs, like all of it is there. The best things and the best stories happen But there's also a negative side to that too. There's
I'm
also
glad
a
to say
shitty.
that I think I was there for like 50% of those stories. So, I know a little bit about what it's like.
Indeed, indeed. So for me, it was about going back to my ideal environment, and my ideal environment was pure me. It was just me. The only voice in my head was mine. It wasn't anybody else's. It wasn't Twitter. It wasn't GChat. It wasn't the guys on the team. It wasn't anybody. It was just me and myself and the tape. That was it. So the only voices that I was hearing was the tape and mine. So that was it. So going back to that is kind of what I needed to do here for the next step in my career. So
Right.
that's kind of where I'm at. And as far as the little things, I'll always say, and my guys will always tell you. When I say my guys, I mean the guys that have taken my class and are trading now, and have been trading for years now. They'll always say, make sure you take time off to enjoy, what's around. Make sure you take time off to enjoy your actual life. Trading is not
Right.
everything, and the more you put so much pressure on your trading performance and things like that, it's sort of that it has the opposite. It has the opposite effect, or it has the
Right.
undesired effect. So always make sure you take some time off to, spend time with family or do things that make you happy. So for me, it's playing tennis. It's for me having the time to sit down and just sit, and just sit and just be, right? In New York, I was never idle, man. Like never ever idle. I was never idle. But
Yeah.
it was that world where like you couldn't be idle, right? New York City is a world where you shouldn't be idle, or at least that's the mentality that's thrown out there. And
Right.
once you feed into it, that's it. You go 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 go, but you don't realize how necessary that idle time is,
Right.
and that's kind of what I'm back to. So even if I'm being idle in New York, I would be like, okay, I'm wasting time. But here, I'm like, I am doing more things for my trading career, and this will eventually hit my bottom line more so than it ever would in New York City. That kind of thing.
Right, right. I mean, and to speak to this, like, John just asked, where is here? We're talking about Boston.
Yeah.
John, he's back in Boston. I was having this conversation with my girlfriend actually the other day. Anon knows my girlfriend really well, Sarah, and we were talking about Instagram, right? And it's like, I'm still in New York, so I'm working. We got our offices, our sort of headquarters, the company in New York, and when I take a break, sometimes I just take out my phone and start looking at Instagram, right? I'm like, and it's like that's like my break for the day, right? My break is like looking at Instagram, and it's like it's a joke. I deleted it from my phone yesterday. I'm like, that's not taking a break, right? And when you
Right.
came out the other day, we went to the U.S. Open. I'm sitting in the back of Anon's car, guys, and I pick out, this book that's laying there, and it was Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom, right?
Yeah.
Long March to Freedom, Long Walk,
Long
March.
Walk to Freedom. Yeah.
Long Walk to Freedom, right? And it's dog-eared up, and he's clearly been digging through it. And I feel like in my experience with you, like there's times where you are in kind of a place where you're taking more sort of downtime, and you're challenging sort of your mind in ways that in New York sometimes it's just hard to do.
It's just harder to do, but it's not really you're challenging your mind. You're just feeding.
Right.
You're feeding. It's almost like you're feeding your desire. You're feeding your. You're kind of more feeding it. You're not searching for it. I don't know. It's hard to explain, man. It's really
Right.
hard to explain, and that would be
Right.
considered idle time.
Right.
If I was sitting around reading a book in New York, and by the way, this is just me. This is not
Right.
everybody in New York City. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody in New York City has no idea how to calm down. I am saying that a large percentage of them
Yes.
definitely have this same issue. I am definitely saying that a large percentage of them have this issue, but that wouldn't happen. Like I wouldn't just sit down and crank out an 800-page book. And by the way, I spent years of my life in a library, and that's always what I've been. That's always what I've done.
Right.
And that
Right.
was, it's just kind of like, it's just kind of like going back to what you do and what you're comfortable with. That's all it is.
And when you pulled the huge, the Citigroup trade, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember talking to you about that, and you had your own office at the time,
Yeah.
but you were solo, right? I mean, you had a
Yeah,
business partner doing other
solo,
stuff, but
solo there. I mean, my business partner would pop in and out every now and then, and and I'm just laughing from Michael
At
Chestnut's.
Chestnut, yeah.
It's like taking it easy, reading books. Who is this guy?
Who is this guy?
It's weird, man. I'm telling you, it's weird. But it's not weird because this is me. You know what I mean? This was always me. In New York, it just kind of brought the other side. It just kind of brought this other side out. This go go go. We gotta make money. We gotta make money every single day. That kind of attitude.
Right.
What were we? What were we? I totally got lost. What were
Well,
we
I mean,
talking
no,
about?
that what you just brought up is really important. You know, you said got to make money every day, like that kind of attitude, and
Yeah.
we've discussed offline that you've sort of taken that pressure off yourself mentally. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that and
Oh
how
yeah,
that?
yeah. Back to the office. Back to the old office. The old
Oh
office.
yeah.
Yeah, it was just me. It was just me, and a business partner would come in and out. Periodically, whatever, throughout a couple of days.
Right.
But again, it was literally just me. I wouldn't use the internet. I wouldn't be on Twitter. I wouldn't be doing any of these things. And all it was just me punting around for maybe like a month. I might have been punting around for 2 months, and all
Right.
I was doing was just finding that. I was finding that setup that I knew I could size into, and I knew I could manage it, and that's really all I was looking for. And I just
Right.
needed. I told myself like that was it. It was just one or these two trades, and you're fine here. You're fine. So just get a good read on the index, get a good read on where we are, get a good read on the players involved, get a good read on how things are moving, the tape in general. And guys, when we say tape, people always tend to say like, okay, it's just this time in sales, or it's just this particular stock or that particular stock. When you're a tape reader, you start to analyze the market through price action. You don't just look at stocks that are up and down or this sector or that sector. You start developing a big picture analysis on what type of market you're in, what type of environment you're in, what trades are working, what trades aren't working. That's what tape reading is. You know what I mean? That's what builds your instinct. That's what allows you to create a style, that fits your personality, that allows you the longevity here in your career, allows you to always be able to bounce back. Understanding those things. Most traders, they come in, they try to hit a couple good ones, they miss a couple bad ones, or whatever, or they get hit maybe, and they burn their account, and that's it. They're gone. They disappear.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about Twitter or a lot of retail guys, you're talking about a lifespan of maybe 3 months. You get one good trade, you get a bad trade, you kind of lost the desire for it, you lost the fire, and you're just like, this is too whatever. That's all that is, and again, they fail to see the big picture, and that's really what tape is. And understanding that will always feed you. It will always feed you for however long you need it to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well said. I won't even try and. Well said.
Yeah, that was good. Good.
Yeah,
That was
you
good.
channeled it right there. Read more Nelson Mandela books, man. So, guys, we're gonna hop into the Q&A here. Before we do, one of the other things that Anand has been working on, during his time off, has been a complete revamp of the training program. Right? The stuff that he has been teaching for the last 2 years, 3 years. Some of it is very complicated, and we have taken huge efforts, our entire company working together to get that all into a format and a curriculum and a structure that is really really facilitates people digesting it and learning it. And Anand has been working his butt off on that too. So we are dropping that extremely soon, guys. Be on the lookout, via email, Twitter. That's going to be coming out. I think it's going to blow your guys' minds when you see where this is at. So without any further ado, let's go back up to the top and kind of go through some of these questions, Luch. So
Sure.
we hit the one, don't technical indicators lag and tape is real time. We discussed that. John said, it's hard to read time and sales for a lot of stocks. You can't read the tape in a lot of heavily traded stocks tick for tick. What do you say to that?
Right, right. So again, I mean that goes back to my last point. You take names like let's say a Microsoft, or you take names like a Bank of America, or you might take names like real thick stocks where you're getting spreads like this. You're getting a 1 cent spread. Volumes are crazy both on the bid and the offer. You're looking at thousands of different transactions that go off within fractions of a second. So oftentimes your tape is just flying around the screen. It's kind of like trying to read tape on the spy. And with these stocks, again, like it's kind of like reading the sector. It's kind of like reading the sector, how the sector is reacting to the market. So it's more of a feel. And by the way, guys, once you get it down, like I don't even really look at the tape, unless I'm really looking for a specific entry or exit. I just sit here and I look at my watch list and I look at how these things are trading, how these things are moving, how they're moving alongside, let's say, the index. So, for example, if we get a big washout on the SPY, how are my sectors reacting to it? And then from there, you're making the analysis that you need, right? Without even looking at some of those tapes. So, with tapes that are too thick to watch, like you can't watch that tape. There's no point in you sitting there watching that tape. But there is a necessity that you need to realize as far as how to read the environment, how to build your instincts, so that you're not necessarily looking at every transaction. And I know that's what John is pointing to. You're not actually looking at all of these transactions and saying, okay, well, was that good or bad for my case? Was this good? I mean, was that a buyer? Was that a seller? Are there more sellers than buyers? By looking at every single one of these transactions, that's not what you're doing. Again, so you want to start reading tape on names that don't move that fast or not that thick, and then build the instinct, and that instinct alone will propel you to be able to trade these extremely well, just like you're trading something where you're actually reading the tape.
Right. Got you. Let's see what else we got. We had T-Rex was talking about the summer's been a little bit down. Karthik. Oh wait, no, Denny Crane. Sorry, Denny Crane has been with us in the chat for a while. Awesome trader in his own right. Do you ever trade stocks versus options if no movement in the options, or do you just wait?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Dude, you've seen me do that. I mean, maybe you haven't seen me recently do that, but absolutely. For example, like let's say a stock is about to come out with earnings, and the options chain is already priced in for all that volatility, or the gap up or the gap down. Then I'll go ahead and make a trade on the stock. Certain times I won't like how the options market is playing. Number one case, if it's too illiquid, then maybe I'll start messing around with the stock too. But for now, like I'm pretty much an options trader here. And again, as far as stock is concerned, that's all going to start coming into fruition once we get more capital. So that's all about branching out to new strategies and evolving as you grow your account as well. So as far as trading stock, as far as writing more options, as far as hedging, as far as possibly looking into futures, or even going back to scalping on stocks, whatever it is, that's the natural evolution as you grow a larger account. So that's kind of my answer to that one.
Right. And when we say talking about getting a larger account, we're talking about getting it to 5, 10 million, $25 million range, right? Yeah.
Right.
So let's see. We got Karthik. Does Anand play gamma at the money options, or does he generally play out of the money calls and puts?
Karthik, that's a great question. So it depends. It really all depends. It depends on what I see coming out of that move. Realize, Karthik, though, that it is more of an analysis on the stock and what I feel the tape could provide me as far as price action goes, and then I'll attach that to the options market. So, for example, if I'm trading a name like, let's say, Priceline, and I know she can move 100 points in 3 days, and I'm trying to catch that breakdown or breakout, then absolutely I'll play farther out of the money I might play farther. I might play a little farther out in time. If it's let's say it's Wednesday, Thursday, and I don't have that much time left on my expiration, then I'll go in the money. Then I'll go in the money, and I might sell that gamma. I might, it depends on what the tape is offering up. It depends on what the environment is offering up. And it also depends if I'm actually paying attention to those things too. So Karthik, you can really advance as far as how you use these options as they sort of pertain to your environment. You really have to differentiate. As for example, if we go through, let's say, a summer month where there's just no volume and no activity, you can't go out of the money. You can't go that far out of the money like you could in let's say before the summer started. Why? Because that volatility is just not going to be there. Nobody else is going to be playing that option. Why? Because they all see the same price action that you see, except you're not paying attention. So it's that kind of analysis. It's that kind of price action analysis that allows you to make a better decision in the options market.
Right. James says, not much of a question, but I applaud the fact that regardless of what is said to him through social media channels, Lucci brushes it off like a true professional. It's nice comment. Less bottles and models for Lucci now that he's back home. I don't. You've been clubbing in Boston yet?
Dude, I haven't moved, man. I haven't moved. I really haven't moved. But I'm starting to get the itch. I am starting to get the itch.
Yeah,
though.
I can see it. I saw you. I saw you when you came to New York for the U.S. Open. I was like, he'll be back. He's gonna be, doing God knows what in New York pretty soon here.
Indeed.
Balu, you asked what technical indicators do you use for options. Maybe you just jumped in, Balu. Early in the webinar we were talking about the tape and how we really feel like that's Anand's advantage over technical indicators. I mean, having said that, you do use some basic technical analysis, right?
Yeah, but he's saying specifically for options,
Right.
So technical indicators for options are a little bit different, there are signals where an option could give you a buy signal. For example, let's say volatility got crushed in a particular option and there's no more downside on that option regardless of what the stock does. As long as the stock just stays cool, there's no more downside on this thing. So you might get a technical indicator that tells you, okay, it's cool to start buying this thing. Why? Because it might be watching the activity down there. It might be using a lot of different things. So, Balu, my only technical indicator for options as far as whether I should buy or sell is me, man. Like I don't use any of that stuff. So again, I mean, as far as technical indicators that you could use, for particular options, that's a good one. Use technical indicators for options when you get those big volatility spikes, and all of a sudden you're looking at, let's say, $1 option, it goes to $4. I would use things like that to alert you to, possible trades and things like that. So I would go there.
Gotcha. That's an awesome quote, by the way. The only technical indicator I use for options is me.
It's me, yeah.
I'm going to put that on like a poster with your face on it or something. All right, let's make this one the last question. Will the new course cover more in the level 2, maybe level 2 manipulation, spotting support and resistance, etc.?
So Jason, like one of the things that we're trying to do, and this will be sort of attaching layers to that particular course, and that's what it's all about now. Now that we have a good foundation, Jason, for the course that I originally taught live, now that we have a good foundation, now we can start layering it with stuff that we couldn't do before. So for example, live tape reading, which is just going to be major. For anybody that wants to learn how to really use this thing, and like practical examples, stuff that happens in the options market as well as the stock market, that's what we're going to start layering onto the existing foundation that we have.
Yes, yeah. I mean, one of the coolest parts about this, what we've been working on, is that we're continually adding more content curriculum to it instead of sort of having a little more of a static class, which is what we had before. I mean,
right. Anybody who's taken the class before, like especially if you take it several times, like you all know, like every time I get into the nitty gritty, like it's always different. There's always new examples. There's always new things to talk about. There's always a new environment. There might be, and realize like you're also evolving with me, so as I evolve my strategies, they're also going to be thrown out there too, just so that you have that knowledge, just so that you see it in a different light and you can be like, oh, that's interesting,
Right.
maybe I can, maybe I can do something on that level. So everything is always constantly evolving, and will continue to do so.
Right. 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 Cool. T-Rex asks for the price. We're still working that out right now. So this thing is coming out in in the very immediate future. So when we have that, we'll let you guys know. Michael asked, old students, do you get asked to the new setup or not? You don't have to answer this live. It is a new course, but at the same time, we've always really liked to, show support for the guys that have been a part
Yeah,
of the community and
we've
taken
always
things. So
godfathered them in. So I don't know. We'll think about it. We will
we'll think
think
about
about
it. We'll think about it. Chestnut, you won the scholarship, so you're kind of in a different category.
it.
So, all right, guys, I think that basically wraps things up. We thank you for joining us here. If you are on the recording, if you have questions, just email us at contact@sanglucci.com, and we'll make sure to email you back. Lucci, thanks for joining. You got anything else you want to throw in here before we bounce?
No, man. Just looking forward to the rest of the year. Should be a lot of great activity as always. So I can't wait to get deep in there.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you for joining. We will see you. Oh, this coming Thursday. Man, I almost
Oh,
forgot.
right.
Lucci and Kunal from Bulls on Wall Street, two of the most charismatic, vocal, off-the-wall Indian traders under the sun, will be speaking 4:30 this Thursday. You'll see it in the email on Twitter. Make sure you catch that. It's always entertaining and informative when those two get together. So check that out.
Definitely. All right, guys. We'll see you Thursday, or you know how to find us.
All right, guys.